Hello everybody and welcome back. Filming this video and editing this video, this is going to be a challenge. Hi everyone! Welcome back to my channel. I haven't filmed in a long time. I haven't filmed in a very long time. At this point, there's no point me giving like a life update. Just at this point, whenever I post a new video, assume that I have like a new house, a new job, I'm in a new place, and I'm just vibing. I'm just doing things and not doing things. I'm just gonna go right into it. There is only one important life update, and that is that this weekend I went alpaca walking. So I'll include a photo right here. My alpaca was called Taihaku. He was really cute. I live on a main road and it is actually impossible to film a video without any background noise. Like, it's not happening. My microphone is currently taped to my tripod because I don't have a cord long enough for any kind of boom pole action or like just having the microphone near me. So you'll have to bear with me. Yeah, you'll just have to bear with me until I have the funds. Also, I live on a main road in London. There is no optimal time to film where there aren't cars. It will be 2 AM and there will still be cars driving very loudly right outside my window. I'm on the ground floor. I'm not even above the traffic. I'm right next to the traffic. Me and the bus driver can wave through my window. Maybe I'll start filming at like 1:30 in the morning, but then the lighting will be bad. But maybe that'll be better than the audio we have right now, but we're just gonna deal with it for this one video. Sorry everyone, you'll have to deal with that today. Audio needs an upgrade. So anyway, back to the alpacas. I got these cute little alpaca earrings made out of alpaca wool. We love that. And today we are not doing makeup or a haul or all my usual stuff. We're making a booktube debut. I have ADHD, and so does my channel. So we're just doing this now. This is our new thing. So enjoy. So today we are doing an October TBR, and for anyone who's just watching my channel because they just happen to be subscribed from a random video from the last 2 years or so, that's my to be read list of books. I suddenly just got into reading again, probably because I'm unemployed. So anyway, read a lot of books in September, but I was kind of saving the October vibe books for October. Because, you know, October, Halloween, Samhain, all that good stuff. I just have like a constant anxiety about the audio, like it's really stressing me out. Anyway, yes, so October TBR, I love Halloween, it's literally my favourite holiday of the year. I fucking love Halloween. I know, it's like I'm the cute like little pink pastel girl, but Halloween is such a vibe. And I love horror conceptually. I'm really not big on horror movies unless it's just spooky. Loved The Woman in Black. It was rated 12. I could deal with that. I can deal with 12. Stuff like Saw, not for me. I don't like the gore and the like intense like body horror, like Human Centipede. Never gonna watch those. That's not happening. But I loved Crimson Peak, which is actually very literary because she's an author and she's really into like horror books and ghost stories. Crimson Peak is like a really good like booktube Halloween movie. Yeah, anyway, so I like spooky things in terms of movies, ghost stories, not so much like gory body horror, but I love a good spooky thriller, scary. When it comes to books, I like horror. I like horror in books because it's just reading. I can just shut my eyes and close it. There's no jump scares in a book. It can't freak me out too much. I can do horror in books, and I'm going to. kind of. Books. With books, I can do a bit more. And I have a very ambitious TBR for this month, just because I've been doing not a lot in September. I've been job searching, attending interviews and trials, doing some art commissions, but other than that, I've had a lot of free time, so been doing a lot of reading. I've read so many books this month, like out of nowhere. I just like picked up a book and read it in like a day, and I was like, okay, next one. Basically, my ADHD brain went, books are your new thing now, so here we are. Without further ado, let's just get into it. I ramble so much. I ramble. Yeah, I think October is probably one of the most popular booktube months when it comes to TBRs, I think, because October just has such a clear theme and atmosphere. Autumn in general, and October and Halloween specifically, it's so easy to like zone in on that theme. It has a very tangible vibe. You can really get the feel of autumn and October. So here is my TBR of all the books that will hopefully get you in the mood for October, for Halloween. And I have to admit, most of these are classics just because there are so many good classics for October. We're starting off with the quintessential horror novel, the grandfather of horror. First up in our classics is Bram Stoker's Dracula. I don't think anyone is surprised by this. Everyone probably has Dracula on their TBR at some point. I think everyone on BookTube who does an October TBR has Dracula on it at some point. So, Dracula. I don't think I have to explain the premise of Dracula. Obviously, it's one of, and I'll get to this later, one of the first ever vampire novels, and definitely the most famous. This is my Barnes & Noble Flexibound edition, by the way. Beautiful black sprayed edges. I love this cover. It's so beautiful. But I also have this beautiful shiny puffin cloth bound edition. So this one's cloth bound. Sorry. But I just fell in love with both of them. They look stupid in my room because it's just like pink everywhere and then all these are like random black books. But like look at that. So I'm gonna hold this one. But yeah, I have two editions. Don't know why. I just do love spooky things, me. This is about a man. Well, first of all, it's an epistolary novel, so it's told through letters, documents, diary entries, etc. So I'm sure a lot of people have seen the BBC series of Dracula at this point, which I think is quite a good, like the first episode is really good at kind of telling the tale of the protagonist kind of going to Dracula's castle and everything that happens thereon. I actually, because I've never read Dracula, I don't actually know much of the details of the story. Like, I know that the protagonist goes there and Dracula exists. That's about it. So I'm actually really excited to kind of delve into it and find out what the story actually is. I just feel like having not read Dracula is a bit of a crime, especially because my English literature tutor from college is probably like getting really angry at me right now. Tom, if you're watching this, I'm reading Dracula. 7 years too late, but that's what counts. There's traffic outside my house, so the cars are like stopped outside and they have all their windows down and playing really loud music. So if you can hear that, I'm really sorry. So that's number one on my TBR, Dracula by Bram Stoker. The second classic on my TBR, which relates to Dracula. So as I said, Dracula is not technically the first vampire novel because this one exists. This is Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. I'm pronouncing that really shit, I know it. He was an Irish author. If there's anyone Irish in the comments who wants to tell me how to pronounce that properly. I have 3 Irish flatmates. I could just walk out my door and ask them. Sheridan Le Fanu, an Irish writer of like Gothic stories. He's got quite a few Gothic stories. And Carmilla predates Bram Stoker's Dracula by 26 years. This could technically be the first vampire novel. And I'm fairly sure that Sheridan Le Fanu was friends with M.R. James, who we will also get to later on in this list. There's something about like all the great writers who are all friends with each other, like Arthur Conan Doyle and Oscar Wilde. It's just cute to know. It's cute to know that they're buddies. This is Carmilla, a vampire tale. I believe this is kind of like a sapphic romance, which is really interesting. This was published in a magazine between 1871 and 1872, which means Dracula was definitely published at the end of the 1800s. So it is really interesting to me that it involves like a strong sapphic romance in that time period, especially like the blurbs kind of talk about like the sexual tension. And I was like, that's really interesting that there's like really strong sapphic themes in a book this old. This tells the story of a girl called Laura, and she kind of lives in the forest in Australia, I believe, with her kind of ailing father, and he's basically her only company and she cares for him. And on a horse-drawn carriage appears Carmilla, who is beautiful and mysterious, and it just details what happens after that, which I don't know because I haven't read it. But look how beautiful this cover is as well. I am absolutely a sucker for like beautiful covers. If I'm gonna buy a book, I will check every edition of the book and pick the cover that I like best. I prefer physically reading paperbacks, but if I really like a hardback, I'll get it. But yeah, I'm just really excited about this because I didn't know that this book existed. Obviously, I think everyone knows about Dracula, but this one was kind of under the radar for me in terms of classics. This particular edition was first published in 2020, so I think it's only like this last year or two that this has kind of been like republished and re-promoted. Yeah, it's kind of being re-promoted. It says on the cover even, the cult classic that inspired Dracula. Yeah, now that I know about it, I'm like really excited to read it. And I think if I'm enjoying Dracula, I'm going to enjoy this. And I love vampire stories, especially like the classic vampire story. Like I love Castlevania on Netflix. I have literally no idea what it's like, but I don't know, the cover just gives me Castlevania vibes. So I'm really excited to experience this one. The Gothic sapphic romance kind of comes across from a novel this old. I just recently finished A Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Obviously Oscar Wilde was a gay author, and it's so interesting seeing something that's now accepted that was so shunned beforehand, and the kind of intervailing, is that a word? The undercurrents of different sexualities before they could kind of be like freely expressed. As someone who's LGBTQIA+, I just really enjoy kind of seeing the history of LGBT+ literature and where the expressions of it came from and how they were expressed before they were allowed to be expressed. So I'm quite excited for this one. I'm excited. So my next one, another classic. And this one is kind of technically a reread, so I might not get to it right away. I might only really do this one at the end if I finish everything else. But I thought I'd put it on here anyway for inspiration for everyone else. It is one of my favourite books of all time, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. If you haven't read Frankenstein, read it. Especially now that it's October. If you haven't read Frankenstein, get out there and do it. It's time. If you have never read it, do it now. For a book that was published in 1818, it is incredibly accessible Mary Shelley wrote this when she was, I think, 20 years old. That's 4 years younger than me. What have I achieved in life, Mary? I'm unemployed. But in all seriousness, Frankenstein is one of my favourite novels ever. I ran out of SD card space again. I can't remember what I was saying. But yeah, Mary Shelley is kind of hailed as the grandmother, the creator, the mother of science fiction as a genre. I fully agree. I support that. If you don't, get out of my video. You don't have to watch. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is just a really interesting novel thematically. Obviously, it's about the Dr. Victor Frankenstein, the scientist. And I guess you could kind of say this is dark academia. I mean, he studies at university and then he goes on a romanticist gap year through the mountains with his bestie Henry. Basically, Victor Frankenstein creates a monstrous creature out of body parts. But the themes of this book are so interesting in terms of the representation of the creature, because he's never called the monster in the book. He's never actually referred to as a monster. He is called the creature. He is called fiend by other people. He is kind of ostracized immediately and abandoned by Victor Frankenstein immediately. And it kind of gives questions of creation and who has the right to create. This idea of usurping Mother Nature, usurping God, the kind of naturalness or unnaturalness of the science of man. And it really brings into question your kind of role of responsibility in terms of the things you create. There's definitely a sympathy for the creature in my reading of this book, in terms of what I think Mary Shelley intended. This isn't a book of the good Victor Frankenstein creating the evil monster. It's so much more complicated than that. That is why I love this book so much. There is so much more to explore in your reading of this, and that's why I really want to reread it this month. I just think like the prose is so beautiful and there's so much you can read into it. There is so much to delve into in the symbolism, the suggestion of the language in this book. I studied this in my English literature course. We did a module on the Gothic, which is probably part of the reason that I love like Gothic and grotesque literature so much. All of that probably comes from the fact that I studied an entire module on it, and Frankenstein was one of my top favourite books. And this book is great. So good. This is also the Barnes & Noble Flexbound edition, same as Dracula. You see, they match. It's so cute. A quintessential October Halloween spooky read, and you should read it too. Right, so my next, again classics. This is actually more of a general category because it's not just one book and it's not just one author. I've kind of got like a little collection going on, so I'll just go over this one quickly because it's fairly self-explanatory. I got these British Library editions. They have this gorgeous silver iridescent foiling on the front. Sucker for beautiful books. So I've got The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, which has the little heart. These are all the British Library editions. The Ghost Stories of M.R. James, which I said before, he was friends with Sheridan Le Fanu, I believe. So the Ghost Stories of M.R. James. And finally, I've got the Gothic Tales of H.P. Lovecraft. So Lovecraft, M.R. James, Poe. And I feel like these are just absolutely classic, spooky, gothic horror. Also, the sun is now coming through my window, as you can probably tell in the background. The lighting is changing. I'm sorry about that. And I also feel like in terms of the British Library ones, I might not necessarily read all of them. Maybe just like one out of the three. I just thought I'd include all of them because they're kind of in the same little anthology category, and I don't know which one I want to start with. They're just all there. They're all there. Okay, and the next book in my October TBR is one that I already technically mentioned at the start of this video as a movie, and that is The Woman in Black. Like I said, love the movie because it's not too scary. And I love that like atmospheric horror, the spooky ghost story, the mystery of it, and the suspense and tension. Like it It doesn't necessarily have to have something happening, but just the like spookiness. This is The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. I'm just hoping this one will be like a spooky, atmospheric read. And because I love the movie, I just wanted to read the book. And once again, it was like a hardcover with like silver foiling, the moon and the title. And I just thought it was beautiful. And I am not one to waste a book that I've bought, so I'm gonna read it for October because it's the perfect time. And it's other ghost stories, so I'm interested to know what those other ones are. We'll find out. Yeah, I don't think there's much to say on The Woman in Black. It's just like one of those classic ghost stories that I'm excited to read. And another classic ghost story. I know there's so many classic ghost stories, you're all probably bored of me by now. And this one is another adaptation of a book into television. And this is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. And this is like a sprayed black edges edition. This is the Penguin Horror, I believe. Yeah, the Penguin Horror. This one is edited and introduced by Guillermo del Toro, and I believe he selected each of the stories in this Penguin Horror series as editor and has introduced all of them. They're kind of his inspirational horror stories, and that's where these like black edge editions come from. The like matte black, the slightly shiny details, and the black edges is just really cool. And I think it's going to be really interesting to read his introduction along with the book. And I have heard that it's very different to the Netflix series. There are significant differences, but I'm still really excited to just read the original and experience it for what it is, as another kind of piece of like classic fiction. I just think the evolution of the horror genre is really interesting. But yeah, I'm just excited to kind of see the evolution of horror and see it from the perspective of someone who deals with a lot of it. I love horror like in film and television, even if I'm too scared to watch a lot of gory stuff. I wrote my dissertation on the monstrous feminine and women in horror, and how women are used in horror and how horror relates to women, both in terms of the victim, the final girl, as well as the monstrous feminine, like I said. I'm really interested by female horror authors. I'm just excited. I'm just excited. And that's why I'm so passionate. I'm passionate about October and Frankenstein and all these women who write about spooky things. Sorry, I just got really passionate about horror. I'm excited to read The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. And that's why it's on my TBR. Oh, this one's a big one. Next up on my TBR is something a little more subdued, not like straight up ghost story horror. This month in September, I read Rebecca, and I feel like if you really like Rebecca, this is up the same theme. But I mean, everyone has probably read this apart from me. I'm a bit slow on this one, but this is Jane Eyre, and I have the beautiful leather-bound edition just because I loved the quote on the front. I am no bird, and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will. If that doesn't scream women, what does? As you can see, I love women. Especially this October. But yeah, so Jane Eyre is a classic. But I wanted something on my TBR that was a little bit less straight up ghost story horror thriller, and something a bit more subdued, atmospheric, gothic in terms of language and theme, but just more of the atmosphere, more of the fall. Why am I saying fall as if I'm American? Autumn, the autumn atmosphere. I'm just excited for a strong female protagonist and the vibes, the spooky, mysterious vibes. So obviously Jane Eyre, she has a bit of a shit childhood, put it bluntly, and she takes a job as a governess in a house full of secrets. So basically it's very similar to Rebecca in terms of the house full of secrets, the ghosts of a person in a house kind of thing. She begins to fall for the man she works for, the owner of the house she is governess for. And I guess it kind of explores her journey through that and the mysteries and secrets that she's encountering, the spooky atmosphere, while also dealing with her own independence and her own flourishing to adulthood and her romance. But yeah, I'm just excited for this one because women. That is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë. Okay, next on my list is finally a contemporary novel. So finally a contemporary. This is one that my mum actually recommended to me. She read this one like this year or last year, and she had the book and she sent me a couple of books to read. I'm not going to show you the actual book because it's right at the bottom of a really big pile. But that is, I'm going to put a picture here. That is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. If I haven't, shame me. Yeah, so she kind of recommended this to me because she is very similar to me. She loves Gothic prose, like the mystery of the house, the kind of bone-chilling atmosphere. But yeah, me and my mum are very similar in terms of our love of the Gothic. So she sent me Mexican Gothic. I'm very aware that this has been like a popular book. I've seen this on a lot of lists, a lot of people's TBRs, especially like last Halloween, I think. But yeah, basically I'm just really excited to read this one because me and my mum have very similar taste and she loved it. But I have heard from other reviewers and readers that it's kind of like really scary, or it has like some very like visceral horror, like body horror in it. And I'm really interested to read that, because I wasn't expecting that for something that was so popular. But yeah, so this is basically about the protagonist, Noemi. I'm pronouncing that terribly, I'm really sorry. Noemi, and she has a cousin who lives in a house called High Place in the Mexican countryside. Her cousin is newlywed. She writes a kind of worrying letter to Noemi, and Noemi travels to High Place to kind of visit her cousin and make sure that she's alright. And when she gets there, she's like, oh no, it's fine, despite this letter. So she decides to kind of stay in the house and figure out what's going on and why that letter was sent. So I guess it's kind of like this mystery, like a mystery Gothic kind of setting. I don't know anything else about it other than that. Yeah, similar to Jane Eyre, I'm just interested in the idea of a female protagonist going to a spooky house with spooky people, figuring out what the hell's going on. And it would be nice to kind of have some contemporary in with this TBR, because as much as I love my classics and I'm excited to read the ones that I've never read before, sometimes you just need that comforting burst of contemporary prose to kind of keep you going. I feel like it's so much easier for your brain to absorb contemporary writing. So if you kind of get strained reading the classics, I like to go from classic to modern, you know. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. So yeah, that's Mexican Gothic. Hopefully Sally has got me on the right path. She's recommended me some good books this year. How many times will my SD card fill up? Oh, how many? Apparently really many. My 10th book / category / entry in my October TBR is my Folio book of horror stories. Yes, the Folio book of horror stories. And this was just a little gift to myself, because I always wanted to try a Folio book, but lots of them are very expensive and I'm not going to buy those. But I really enjoy this. I think the cover is really cool and really spooky. I like the hands down the spine. Yeah, and these kind of come with like illustrations. The thing I really liked about this anthology is that it's got some obscure pics, and a lot of people complained about that in reviews of this, but I'm always excited to read things that are a little bit less popular and more obscure, because especially in an anthology book, the likelihood is, if this was filled with like Dracula and Frankenstein and all that, I already have those books. And if you want to read them, you're just going to pick up the singular copy. You're not going to pick up a whole anthology to read Frankenstein. And the main book in here that I'm really excited for is The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. And once again, women in horror. I don't know a lot about the premise of The Yellow Wallpaper. I think it's basically about a woman who is going through what we now know is postpartum depression, but back then she was just experiencing psychosis apparently. So they just put her in a room with yellow wallpaper, and that's basically her experience of being in that room and dealing with her like mental health and the kind of scariness that that brings on. And as someone who suffers greatly with bad mental health, I just think that would be a really interesting read for me. I know my mum is also a big fan of The Yellow Wallpaper from her degree. Obviously, we just have the same taste. We just like gothic tales about women and spooky things and spooky houses. This is just a very beautiful book. I just wanted to treat myself to something, and if I was gonna buy a Folio book, it might as well be a cheap one. That's an anthology of horror. So that is my October TBR. Like I said, October is probably one of my favourite months of the year. I'm just excited to get into the spooky, atmospheric autumn vibes. I'm just excited to delve into the witchiness, the spookiness. That's my TBR for October. Let me know down below what you are wanting to read this month. Mine is kind of ambitious because it was like 10 separate categories with a couple of books. I don't think I'll get to all of these. If I do, it will be a miracle. I'll be very happy. Yeah, just let me know what you're reading in October down below. Very aware that this is completely different to any other video I've done. Hope you enjoyed my booktube debut. And once again, I am so sorry for the audio quality. I will get a new mic and a longer wire literally as soon as I can. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, if you like this content, give it a thumbs up so that I know this is something completely new. And if you want to see more book content, or any content, comment down below what you'd like to see. Hit the subscribe button if you like moi. And as for my little recommended creator section, this is where I recommend someone's shop or art or channel. This is where I recommend people. Shut up, cars. This section at the end of my videos where I recommend people. I just slapped my thigh. So today I'm recommending my bestie, Graciana, over on Twitch. She streams fairly regularly, some wonderful content, Overwatch, Skyrim, Sims. So you can check her out on twitch.tv/Graciana. I will link everything down below. And that is it for me today. Thank you guys for watching. I love you very much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye!